Hi, Mark. Lovely to talk to you. I'm Jim Culleton, the artistic director of Fishamble, the new play company.
So Jim, Fishamble, such a groundbreaking and kind of company for many many years. But before that, I think was Dramstock and UCD a part of your life before that?
Yeah, so Fishamble we were originally called Pigsback, and the company's going now for since 1988. I was part of a bunch of students. I was in Trinity and part of players there and the drama department, and I was part of a big bunch of students that got together kind of over the summer to put on plays. That met at ISDA, the Student Drama Festival, and then kind of a gang of us from Trinity and from UCD kind of got together when we were still students really, and as we were leaving college, and decided to form a theatre company. So it was quite rough and ready in those early years, but then over a couple of years it became more serious, and we became committed then to new plays. Initially plays by people that were in college together. So people like Deirdre Hines and Michael West and Gavin Costick, that we were all in college with. We started creating our own work really, and then it grew from there.
And Jim, was it all like going back to you as a child? Like, was this something that you kind of did? Was theatre in your bones?
Yeah, I always loved it really, So I was, went to drama classes, and as a child, I was in some films and kind of doing some acting as a child. I was kind of the resident boy in RT radio drama for a few years until they rang me up one day and said, do you have a sore throat, Jim, or is your voice broken? I was going, oh, no, it's not broken at all. But that was the end of my my child radio acting days. But I kind of was always kind of into it, and then taking part in the National Youth Theatre as a teenager, and then doing drama in Trinity, I suppose. I was kind of always kind of keen on getting involved.
Was it in your family? Was there kind of a tradition?
Well, my family is kind of, I was always kind of taken to plays, and kind of, and my dad was involved in amateur dramatics for a while, and my mother's family is very musical. I have an aunt who's a professional musician, so it was kind of there in the background, but not kind of nobody particularly working in theatre or being in theatre professionally.
And was that something that when you went to college was it at that stage you kind of knew, or was it the idea of going to college to try and professionally explore it, or was it later on?
Yeah, no, it was just something I really loved, and I just really wanted to study drama more than anything else. So it was kind of the very early stages of the drama department in Trinity. That started off kind of, I think, 85, 86. So it was only a few years into that. And I'd known a few people kind of the year ahead of me, like people like Paul Keoghan and Karen Ardiff, and kind of that I was talking to, and they were sort of telling me about it. And I thought, oh, this is kind of, this sounds like what I'd love to do. So I suppose it was to kind of see, could I continue, exploring theatre and hopefully working in it really was the aim, even though I didn't know what shape that would take, I suppose, at the start.
And in school and stuff, was it kind of, a lot of other people on this have spoken about, the fact there's loads of sport around them and loads of, different things that weren't necessarily the arts. Was that kind of in your school life as well, or was it something different?
Yeah, no, I absolutely. I was kind of less interested in sport kind of at school, but it was a great place for kind of doing kind of plays and kind of letting you get, and there was a lot of drama in school as well. So I was kind of really kind of very lucky to have that kind of all the time growing up,
And then in college, then it became more serious. You said there's people around you that you kind of went, okay, this is a bit more than just fun.
Yeah, I think that's the thing, isn't it? You're kind of, you're in your school plays, and you're kind of, you're kind of, you're one of a small set of people there, and then you come to college and you meet kind of really like-minded people where everyone there is kind of, committed and to kind of to theatre and kind of and the thrill of that and kind of the is great, and the friendships you make with your peers, I suppose, kind of really last a long time. So that kind of really sort of galvanizes you, I think, and it's great to sort of study and ultimately be able to work in something that you feel really passionate about is kind of a real privilege, I think.
And tell me, from an early boy star in RT radio, was acting kind of the thing?
I suppose it was, yeah. Now, boy star is your phrase there, Mark, not mine, just like to point out. But no, it was. It was always. I was always. I suppose, as a child, you think maybe that acting is the way to be involved in theatre. So I think I was. I was kind of. That's how I was interested first. and you only realize kind of other things as you go on. And I think just in school, but also in college, then, that's one of the great things that you get to try, stage management and lighting and sound and, all the other aspects, directing and writing. I did a playwriting course with Steve Wilmer in Trinity, I remember, and I wrote some really terrible plays, the worst plays that you could ever possibly imagine. But you try it out, you see what it's like, and then that kind of work was, kind of fed into my interest in developing plays and directing new plays, even though I wouldn't be good for writing them myself. So I suppose, you start off maybe wanting to act, and then realizing there are lots of other roles, which is,
did you start directing in college? Were you directing?
I did, yeah. I did. I was. I remember being at school. I was in Belvedere, and I remember we were studying Macbeth actually. And I remember going to one of the teachers saying, "Oh, can we put it on? And let's put on the play." And they kind of said, "Well, if you can, if you want to direct it yourself, you can put it on. You can have the room every Tuesday and Thursday for an hour and a half or whatever it was." And off we went. So I was kind of getting into it in school a bit, and then certainly in college, kind of got more and more interested in directing. I was when I was in college, I remember being in a play one summer in college. I was in a play in the Gate. Just playing a very small part, and then something else, another chance came up to act in something, and it clashed with something I planned to direct, and I just thought, all right, I was choosing choosing the directing job, I suppose, rather than the acting one, and kind of got more interested in that. I think at the time as well, nowadays I think people are much more fluid about that, and it's kind of great. People consider themselves as theatre makers, and they're acting and writing and directing and creating theatre in ways where roles kind of sort of merge in and out of each other, sometimes a little bit more. Whereas I think kind of certainly when I was starting off there, kind of in the early 90s, you kind of, people would say to you, well, are you an actor or are you a director? Like, which is it you want to do? And you had to kind of, the sense was you had to take yourself seriously as one of those, or in whatever role you wanted, in order to try and forge a career in that,
Yeah. It's funny, I've kind of said that to a lot of people, because I think, we come out of college similar times, and I, again, used to workshop, direct, write, whatever, the whole, write music, and it was kind of seen as a bad thing, that you mustn't be any good at any one of them if you did a lot of things, it was kind of weird.
I know. Whereas creative people are kind of, often good at lots of different things, and that's part of the fun of it. But there was a sense that you had to, if you hadn't decided on one particular thing, then maybe you were still searching.
Yeah.
But I was, having said that, very happy to kind of throw myself wholeheartedly into directing, and still got to kind of the work with as a director, you get to work with actors and technicians and writers, and that's, so you're still involved in all aspects, which is kind of a nice thing about it.
So is that true then of Jim Culleton, that your first play was Macbeth, William Shakespeare? Is that the first play you directed?
Oh gosh, I don't know if it was the first play. I was kind of about 15 or 16, I suppose, then doing that,
Yeah.
But I've been doing kind of doing other plays kind of in as a child up to that as well.
And what were you doing what did you do in the Gate? What was the small part? What play was that?
I was in a production of School for Scandal, actually, when I was kind of starting off and still in college and stuff. Patrick Mason was directing a production. I was one of the lads, kind of hanging around in that, and doing some stage management and having a small part, kind of, so kind of real traditional kind of way into theatre. I remember at the time, actually, Maureen Potter was in it, and I was trying to get my equity card, and you had to get 2 equity members to sign your equity form or whatever. And I remember asking, Maureen Potter, who was such a lovely, lovely person, to sign my form, and going home to my parents, and they were saying, "Oh well, God, if you've got Maureen Potter signing your form, they'd have to let you in." So it was a good, a great kind of time, as kind of whatever I was, like 19 or 20, to be working with people, like of that caliber, and with that kind of experience. It was a great rehearsal room to productive be in.
Yeah. And then I suppose, as you said, you left college, and the group from different colleges got together and around Pigsback and so. Where did the impetus for you, particularly, Jim, around new writing? Like, I mean, obviously you've directed other things as well, but I mean, what Fishamble will be known for is that space of new writing. And how did that come about from the beginning?
Yeah, I suppose that was just something I was really interested in from the beginning. I mean, I have been lucky enough to be asked to direct plays by the already existing plays as well, and that's a kind of that's a great challenge to think how you might reimagine a new production of an existing play. But I suppose working with writers and working in new plays is what I've really been passionate about and really fired up by from an early enough stage. I think just the idea that you're working with a writer on a vision of the world that is new and original and that has never been heard before is just really, really exciting. And certainly kind of, I love the kind of the stage of developing the play. You're talking to writers about commissions and ideas, bringing that all the way through to rehearsals and putting the team together and then bringing that through to production for an audience. It's a very thrilling kind of experience, and the fact that nobody knows what's ahead is kind of is part of that. So it's always risky. I mean, the odd time you think, God, maybe it would be it'd be nice to take a play off the shelf that someone else has tried out first and proven that it works, and then see what you might do with it. So it always feels like quite risky, but that's part of the fun of it, I suppose, that you don't know how it's going to go down, and an audience doesn't know what to expect and what's ahead of them. So when it works, then it's really extra exciting, I think. So I just really I love that process and every aspect of it, really working on something that's never happened before.
And was that awakening for you very, very early in those early years? Like, was that kind of something that kind of...
Yeah. I suppose when we were starting off with Pigsback and then Fishamble, there weren't many independent theatre companies. So you were looking at Druid and Rough Magic and a couple of other companies like Commotion and Wet Paint, as real kind of trailblazers and examples of how people could do their own thing. And then, of course, the Abbey and the Gate, were there as kind of the main kind of building-based theatre companies. And I suppose we were thinking, well, we were aspiring to be doing something similar to Druid and Rough Magic at the time, but also thinking, how could we be different and do our own thing? And I felt like doing new plays might be a way to do that. And it was also a practical thing. We'd all been sort of, in playwriting classes together in university, and we got to know each other. So it was kind of like, it was a question of saying, oh, the play you wrote that we read the other day, let's give that a go. It seemed really good. And just thinking about kind of working with our peers and contemporaries and what that would involve, and the material and the subject matter that people were engaging in seemed kind of exciting for us. So I suppose, as a young director, I was looking at my friends and peers, and they were, interested in exploring issues that I was interested in as well, really, so it seemed like a good match.
And the bridge then from, their college space into, the industry or professional land, I mean, how did that transition for you?
Well, I suppose we were very lucky, from the early stages to have support from the Arts Council and from Dublin City Council, and to kind of be able to grow and develop a company, and to think kind of long term in terms of planning that. And then it got more serious as we went on, I suppose, and then we kind of branched out from among our own circle of kind of, of peers into thinking about new plays in the broader sense, so we started commissioning plays, commissioning writers we really admired and liked. We started kind of growing the company. So Gavin Costa came on board as literary manager, and then we've had some fantastic general managers and producers over the years, with people like Maureen Kennelly and Joe Mangan and Orla Flanagan, Ciara Flynn, Marketa Dowling, and now Eva Scanlon, kind of a really great a bunch of people to work with, and kind of side by side with, and so the company kind of grew as a business, and grew as artistically as well over those years, So it's and then we also then started attracting, success breeds success, I think, a bit. So when we started kind of, in the mid-90s, we started, going to London a lot with plays and touring around the country with plays, and then people just thought of us as a place to go to with their plays. Like back in the mid-90s, it seems ages ago now. Here we are, thinking we're very cool and technological on our Zoom meeting. But, in the days before the internet in the mid-90s, we got a play once from a writer. He had looked up the yellow pages under T for theatre. He had sent the play to everyone that was listed as a theatre company. And I remember reading a play that came out of the blue, laughing and crying and thinking, oh, this is amazing. And so we rang him up, and it was Mark O'Rowe, who had just written his first play and had, never written a play before, and sent it to us. So it's really exciting when you come across a play and a new voice like that. And then we've also, I suppose, commissioned writers, commissioning, commissioning very established writers. So just working recently with Sebastian Barry on his play on Blueberry Hill, we've commissioned him a couple of times. And Deirdre Kinahan, working with at the moment towards a play for later in the year. So and mixing that with working with emerging writers and new writers is very exciting. You know what I mean? So we just did a play recently, The Alternative, as you know, by Oisin Carney and Michael Patrick, who were at the very early stages of their writing career and now are, taking the world by storm, and on BBC One with their TV series. So you're working with people at different stages of their careers, emerging writers and established writers, and trying to, I suppose, find plays that grapple with why we do what we do, with the world we live in, the strangeness and oddness of the world around us, and it's kind of certainly very strange at the moment. So you're kind of you're constantly trying to find ways of finding plays and working with writers that have an urgency about them, and finding plays that kind of demand to be produced, and that kind of has kept us motivated and committed to that type of work, really.
Gas, when you mentioned there, which, like, for me it seems like a lifetime ago, but it is quite a long time ago, but that sense of plays in the post and in the yellow pages, and I actually remember doing that when I left college, looking up who do I contact, but that sense of receiving work, I mean, that I'd say your letterbox was full. Was it back in the mid 90s?
Yeah, sure. Well, I suppose, it was a challenge then to produce work and to get new work on the stage. It's still a challenge, to get new work on the stage. Thankfully, we're funded by the Arts Council and still by Dublin City Council, and now, of course, by Culture Ireland as well when we tour internationally. But it's still a challenge. There's more. We would love to do more work if we could, and we're always trying to find partners and working with great places like yourselves in Access and other venues and festivals. You're kind of relying on developing a network of partnerships to make the work happen and to find people that feel similarly passionately about the work that you do yourself. So it's kind of and then that attracts a lot of plays as well, and we had a project a while back called Tiny Plays for Ireland, and we did we received over 1,700 tiny plays from people, expecting maybe 300 or 400, which would be what we might normally have expected in that kind of a thing. So we ended up choosing 50 of these plays and producing them over 2 different productions. And then, of course, you get plays from people saying, oh, you're the company that does tiny plays. I have a tiny play. And you're thinking, oh, well, we've kind of moved on to something else now. Or you get a play, from somebody saying, oh, I see you did a play about, Northern Ireland, or about, kind of homelessness. So I have a play about that too. And you think, well, we like to be varied. We like to have a diverse range of voices in the work we do and try and represent as many people as possible. So you don't want to always do the same kind of work, but certainly, we get a lot of scripts from people who have seen our productions and kind of feel maybe that we'd be a company that they could trust or they'd like to engage with, which is very, very flattering. And I suppose, we get about 250 plays a year, totally unsolicited, apart from the kind of commissioned plays or the plays that come through other initiatives that Fishamble has. And in a way, very few of those go to full production, like Marco Rose play did. A few years back then, maybe sort of 2005 or 6, Sean McLaughlin sent us his first play out of the blue, and that was another one that made it all the way through to production when we did Noah and the Tower of Flower with yourselves in Access. But I suppose that doesn't happen much, and that's typical, I think, for a lot of theatres. We did some work with Ruth Little over the last few years, who was the literary manager at the Royal Court and has worked with lots of great new play companies around the world. And I think she was saying that 1 in every 12,000 plays would come through the unsolicited process and get onto the stage. So it's hard for people to get all the way from being totally unsolicited and out of the blue. But then somebody brilliant does come along at some point or another. But we've also found, I suppose, that what we've done in more recent years is kind of say to people, look, we'll initiate a project like Shorts or Whereabouts or Tiny Plays for Ireland or a Play for Ireland, and invite people to submit ideas or plays that we want on an issue and a theme that we want. So, and then that gives us a chance to go to people who send us their unsolicited script that maybe we hasn't been the right fit for us, but we say, look, we loved your writing, or we loved your characterization, or whatever we liked about your play, so will you please think about submitting something for this? And that's been a great way as well for us to meet writers and develop work with writers we admire, and a lot of that work has subsequently developed into commissions and productions, which is very rewarding.
And Jim, there's the artistic director of Fishamble and the vision, the maintaining and guiding of that piece, and then there's Jim Culleton, the director in the room. And I'm interested in that kind of divide, the kind of running of the company, or like, being the AD of a company, and then being in the room on day 0 with a script and putting that on the stage, and can that be difficult at times, those two things?
I think it's a particular kind of challenge, I suppose, because the artistic director of the company, I mean, working with a great team of people, like with Eva and Gavin, we mentioned already, and also Chandrika, our marketing and development person, and Ronan, our office and production coordinator. And so there's a little team of us, and it's great to work with them. But our focus always is on the plays and on, working with writers and actors and designers and technicians. You're working in the rehearsal room on productions that then reach an audience, and we do a lot of we do a lot of touring. We tour, not this year with the current pandemic crisis, but in general, over the past decade or so, we would typically tour 8 or 9 productions to about 50 or 60 venues, maybe 240, 250 performances of work each year, as well as running lots of new play initiatives like the New Play Clinic and duets with the Irish Theatre Institute and Dublin Fringe Festival. So it's a busy kind of organisation, and we really like it that way. So the job of artistic director actually is constantly busy. So you sometimes have to kind of go, well, I'm going to be in rehearsals now for 4 or 5 weeks, and yes, you're checking your emails at lunchtime and you're catching up on office stuff in the evenings, but you've got to try and prioritize the work in the rehearsal room as well, and realize that that's what it's all based around. That's what it's all about, is producing the work and making sure that work is as timely and as provocative and as engaging for audiences as possible, But I love the duality of it, really, the two things. I really like being involved in running a company, and the business side of it I actually really like, but I also love then to go into the rehearsal room and work with artists and other theatre artists and colleagues. That's what it's all about, and that's kind of, at the moment, that's kind of such a hard thing, I think, for the whole theatre community. There's a great solidarity and a great support for each other, and it's a great community to be part of, but we're kind of, I think we're all longing to get back into being able to physically connect and work together in a room together,
And in relation to that, would you say that you have a way of working, is there something that you look for in a room that for you as a director? Is there ways that you prepare that kind of go across your whole career, or is it just completely different in relation to whatever play it is?
Yeah, I think there's it's like, that thing, was it General Patton said that, planning is essential, but plans are useless. So I think you kind of do a mixture of planning for how you'll run rehearsals and what you'll do in rehearsals, but then you also have to be prepared for the plans to be thrown out the window, because every play is different and every writer and every cast is different. And so different plays have different demands, really. So I suppose, I try to really, I think, trying to make sure you have the right team with you is so important. So I really value the colleagues I work with, in fantastic teams of people. So you're trying to make sure you have the best possible collaborators in the design and creative team and production management and stage management and technical team, and then trying to cast a play, really as well as possible with the absolute best actors you can get, who are, and we try to work really with absolutely lovely people that we really admire and respect, but also really enjoy working with, in Fishamble. So if you've got a really right team, and if that's worked well for you, then you're off to a great start. So I suppose, as an overall rule, you'd certainly be trying to make sure the rehearsal room is a really safe, enjoyable place for people to be as creatively free as they possibly can, and to explore this play and dive into it in the way that is as rigorous and productive as possible. So that, and then you have a kind of a structure, maybe, like typically, I suppose, we'd sort of spend maybe the first week, because it's a new play, perhaps sitting around the table chatting about it, or most of the first week, and you might have the writer with you, and then you might, get on with kind of trying to kind of stage the play and get it up on the floor and see what happens, and maybe the writer might come in and out a bit during that time, and then, during your final week of rehearsals, you'd be doing regular run-throughs, and the writer would be coming in, and you'd have, discussions about how that's going. I mean, there's kind of a sort of a standard structure, I suppose, that we feel works well. But then, of course, every play is different, and every process is different, and you've got to be open to that as well, to make sure it works as well as possible for that particular play. And
Jim, how are you in letting go then, in kind of that process between tech and dress and opening night?
Yeah, sure. Well, I think I just really love working with actors. I think actors are amazing people. So I really do enjoy letting the actors get on with it, and feeling that by opening night, it's their show, and the stage manager and the stage management team and the actors get on with it. So I don't like, you know, I don't come in every night and watch the play, and I don't like, you know, I don't hang around backstage tormenting the actors. But I do like to keep an eye on it and keep in touch with people, usually. And so I think you rely on those show reports every night from the stage manager coming in. I'll often be like thinking, oh, the play is, you know, the first few days, especially after the opening night, I'll be thinking, well, the play is over now and I hope it went well. And, you know, and then you'll be kind of, you know, checking your emails to see has the show report come through and to see how it's gone and how the audience reacted and was everything okay. And I would normally, I suppose, depending on whether something's on tour or where it's playing, I would normally get in maybe once a week to see a play and just give some notes and see how it's coming along, you know. And then that changes a bit as well. I mean, you know, we've obviously had a lot of all of Pat Kinnavan's one person plays in with you at Axis, and they've toured all around the world and had great response, thankfully. But Pat and myself are very friendly, you know. So I remember we were in New York doing one of his plays, and I was backstage, like the show was at 8 o'clock, and at 20 to 8, I was backstage chatting to Pat. And the stage manager, who was American, came backstage and was appalled and said, get out, what are you doing? You know, you shouldn't be backstage. The half-hour call has passed, and the director shouldn't be backstage. And I said, oh, I'm sorry about that. I'm just chatting to Pat. You know, I'm not giving him notes or anything like that. And then he went, oh, no, but we mustn't have the director backstage, you know, unless it's okay with you, Pat. I mean, you're the actor. It's your half-hour call. Do you want me to remove the director? Or do you want... And Pat said, yes, please get him out of here. He's doing my head in, which is very bold of him. But I mean, so that was kind of different, but I do understand where that comes from. And I think absolutely, you know, it's a great rule not to have directors backstage after the half-hour call trying to torment the actors with notes. So I'm kind of usually good. On that occasion I wasn't, but usually good about letting them get on with it, and once the show is open, letting it off. But I like to be there for the opening night. I know a lot of directors kind of don't like to be in the auditorium for the opening night, but I quite like being there for that and experiencing the reaction myself, you know, but then leaving them to it.
And in relation to, you mentioned Pat there, I think, I mean, you know, I've said this to you before, but I think the work that you did with Pat over those shows has been extraordinary. And because they're so delicately directed, do you know what I mean? In a way that it's kind of released him and released his theatricality and released kind of huge depths of writing into the piece without being visible, if that makes sense. And I think that, well, what's the experience of that, Jim, of working with a one-person show compared to like working with a large cast?
Yeah, it's kind of, both of them are kind of so enjoyable in different ways, you know. Like for the alternative recently, we had 7 people on stage, and we had sort of, you know, another 11 people kind of, you know, on video and recordings and vision mixers and camera operators all on stage. It was just fantastic to do a play with a huge number of people, and that came out of our initiative, A Play for Ireland, and the idea was to try and make sure we could do a big new play with a large cast and a big scale ambition and tour it all around the country in partnership with other venues. So it was lovely to do something kind of big, because very often you feel, you know, the new plays that make their way to production and have a touring life kind of tend to be the plays with 2 or 3 actors in it, you know, and so it's lovely to do something much bigger than that. But then to work on a one-person play, you know, especially if it's by somebody like Pat Kinnavan, is really extraordinary. Like, he's just amazing to work with. And as a director, he just comes in and he just will do everything like a half dozen different ways, and you're constantly making choices and, you know, discussing, you know, the benefits of doing something one way or the other. So he's just bursting with imagination and theatricality, you know, which is really great to work with. And I think, and I've worked with like Pat and with Eva O'Connor recently as well on Maz and Bricks that we just had in New York a couple of months ago, and you know, Jonah O'Kelly and other people who have who've written their own work, I suppose, and that's kind of different, I suppose, then again, to having a writer who's not performing in the play. But all those people, actually, I must say, they're all fantastic at separating the two jobs. You know what I mean? So in rehearsals with Eva or Donal or Pat, you'll say, "Oh, what were you thinking when you were writing this? What had you in mind?" And they'll all say, "Oh, I have no idea. I can't remember." Like, they distance themselves from the writer really effectively. I think if they were kind of, you know, if they were there in the rehearsal room going, "I've written this. This is how we're going to do it. I know best," then, you know, that wouldn't work. But it's a lovely collaborative process. They're as open to possibilities as an actor as anyone else, even though they've written the play, which is a great way to work.
I remember being asked, it was at the was more than a stage reading, but it was a kind of part production of Pat's latest show as part of the Dublin Theatre Festival, I think a couple of years ago, and it was incredible.
Oh, yes, before, was it?
Yeah, but it was incredible watching Pat and you because, like, you know, Pat would kind of get lost and then go, Jim, what comes next? Jim, and
Yeah.
but even not even without breaking too much character, but it's that kind of symbiotic relationship between the two of you, which was kind of really interesting.
Yeah, no, sure, absolutely. Yeah, well, I think that comes from working together a lot, you know. So, I mean, we did Pat's first few plays there in kind of the late 90s, which were big ensemble pieces that he wasn't in. But then from 2006 onwards, we've been working on the solo shows together, you know what I mean? So there've been 4 so far, and we're at the very, very early stages of discussing a new 5th solo play with Pat at the moment. So I suppose when you've got a kind of a lot of trust between people and a long working relationship, that kind of yeah, you kind of that kind of a way of working really develops kind of in a great way. And I remember that in development, yeah, sort of showing up before we were doing with Dublin Theatre Festival. And as you say, you know, it was in development, so I was prompting Pat a bit, and he would every so often check in how he was doing. And a few people thought that was part of it and were saying, oh, it's really exciting the way the director is on the edge of the stage prompting us, going, well, I won't be doing that when we do the show, hopefully.
Sebastian, kind of, you mentioned briefly there, but Sean McLaughlin's known as Terraflare, that was 13 years ago, but people still talk about that here with Darren and Mary, and that was just, I mean, for me, it was kind of an amazing time, kind of with the play being set in Ballymun, with the towers, you know, being taken down outside the place where the play was set, and just what you carved out with that writing and those performances, it was incredible. It was an incredible couple of weeks.
Yeah, I know. I've really fond memories of that as well. Yeah, it was an amazing time, and Darren Healy and Mary Murray are just such fantastic actors, you know. So it was a really, really special time. Yeah, and I think that's kind of, you know, you're looking for plays like that just where the plays come from the heart, and you feel this writer is the absolute best person to write this. So Sean wrote such a beautiful play set in Ballymun, and then to work with you guys in Access and make sure it premiered there was absolutely right for that. And then, and recently, like we're doing a streaming over Easter of Inside the GPO that we did on the centenary of the Rising in 2016, and that's written by Colin Murphy, who's, you know, a journalist as well as a playwright, and so that seems like the perfect person to write something like that that's site specific. You know, you're trying to find the kind of the best possible people to write the right kind of plays, and we love that about it, that we're site specific with some work. We're inside, you know, a theatre, you know, for one play we're in the West End recently with Sebastian Barry's play on Blueberry Hill, or we're touring around the country. We're down in the West Cork Fit Up Festival, kind of hopping from island to island on the boat into various parish halls, doing kind of, you know, other work with Pat and other people. So it's kind of, we love the variety of that and the range of that, and the way of engaging with audiences in different ways is really exciting. So that's being a kind of a touring new play company. I suppose that range of work is really exciting for us, you know. And then we're working with different voices, like, you know, people like Rosalie McDonough as well, who's, you know, just got that diverse range of voices, and people with a kind of a different view of things. But that's what theatre is about, I suppose, isn't it? Really, it's, you know, bringing the audience into a room, which hopefully we'll be doing again at some stage, and inviting them to see the world from a different perspective, so that when you leave after an hour and a half or whatever, that you do sort of view the world a bit differently, and maybe think, you know, differently, having met the characters and been in their shoes for a while.
Yeah, I think there's a couple of things on that which are, you know, because I remember the first time that, actually it's probably around the time of knowing the Terraflare, of kind of going into your office with Ray and Roshan at the time, and kind of going, where's the rest of the team? Because, like, you know, for the amount of work that you do, and even more so now, you know, like from such a small, you know, core team is absolutely incredible. And I think what you just said there around the diversity of the work. I mean, you mentioned Colin Murphy. I mean, your work with Colin in the last decade has been really, really interesting, you know, around exploring things that, well, let's say were quite delicate.
Yeah, sure. No, absolutely. Yeah. I remember the first play we did by Colin, I mean, was guaranteed, about the bank guarantee. And there was kind of a sense, I think, that the banking industry hadn't had an inquiry into the bank guarantee, and nor had the government. So I remember Fintan O'Toole writing a piece saying, oh, it's up to a theatre company, you know, it's up to Fishamble to do this. And we had like Colin had two sources for every scene. We had lawyers reading the script, and in rehearsals, actors would say, "Well, I'm not sure. Do I need to say that, or can I just say this?" And we'd say, "No, you have to say it. The lawyers have approved the script." Like, it was like lawyers as dramaturgs. It was really bizarre, but quite exciting as well to do to use theatre in a way that raised such issues. And we, for all those plays by Colin, like, we bailed out as well. We would have a post-show discussion with a panel of politicians and economists after each show, and we'd have a little break. And the way normally, for a post-show discussion, maybe a third of the audience or possibly a half of the audience might stay on if they're very interested. But for this, everyone just stayed. Like, everyone just thought, there's an interval, there's a play, there's an interval, and then there's a discussion. And those discussions were electric. You know what I mean? So you're kind of creating work that has that kind of, that has that energy of being really urgent and important. And even when we did Colin's play inside the GPO, it was 100 years after the Rising. We were inside the GPO, but that play began with the audience being asked to stand for the national anthem, and everyone sang "God Save the King." And there were people outside on O'Connell Street on the centenary of the Rising, listening to us inside singing "God Save the King," and we got death threats, and the Gardaí were diving in the sewers underneath the GPO to check for bombs. Like, you kind of thought, wow, we're really, it's kind of lovely, all those times when you feel theatre really has the power to ignite people's passions. It's a good thing.
Well, maybe not ignite them too much.
Not too much, no, maybe that's the wrong choice of word, perhaps. No.
And also, in that line as well, I remember sitting in the Peacock watching Hawley Gregory, and just that sense of, the way the style matched what was being said, and also, what you did with that in a directorial way is really, really interesting.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah, thanks very much. I'd love to take total credit for that, but it was Conal Morrison actually that directed Hawley Gregory. I'll take the praise.
But I just think there's a thread there within your company about kind of authenticity is the wrong word, but that kind of sense of making things that will register with an audience where they're at, and that seems from talking to you to carve right back to those days post Dramstock or post Players, when you kind of were devising or writing shows based upon your own interests or like things that were happening in your own lives. And
I suppose so. Yeah, I think authenticity is a good word, and you're looking for plays that are truthful and that come from the heart, and that people are passionate about. And of course, there are so many ways of making theatre, and there's no, there should be room for every way. I mean, the way I like to work from a personal point of view and in Fishamble is with playwrights and on plays that are written. And I suppose when you do that, you feel you want, you really want the writer to be, wearing their heart on their sleeve, or to be, delving into something and sharing something that they feel really, really passionate and strongly about. Because if you don't have that, everything else falls apart. I think, we kind of feel as a company in Fishamble, through the dramaturgical work that Gavin does and through the way we develop plays, we feel we can help people with structure or character development, all those things. But if the writer doesn't have the kind of passion to start with, and and that authenticity, it's never going to work. So we do look for that, plays that kind of cry out to be performed and need to be on stage.
But it's also kind of, and I'll leave you on this. I sort of put tease out. There's also a kind of that's 23, 24 years ago, or 25, 26, 27 years ago in relation to kind of leaving college and that. But there's an amazing, and I think it's testament to all your work, but there's an amazing freshness to it. The basic, what I'm trying to say is the author is placed first. Do you know what I mean? So if that's a fresh voice, it doesn't seem to go through a kind of a company vehicle. Do you know what I mean? So the company lives via the author rather than the opposite way around, if that makes sense.
Yeah, well, we love working with playwrights. We love kind of a diverse range of voices. We love to kind of I suppose we're drawn to plays where people maybe are on the fringes of society, or plays about people that maybe are sometimes overlooked, or an alternative way of looking at the world that kind of is provocative and gets people thinking and engaging with the world in a different way. So I suppose what that means, I think, sometimes is that our plays are all have that in common maybe, but are quite different to each other in other ways. And we love the variety of that. I mean, it's sometimes a challenge for Chandrika, who's doing our marketing, because we can't quite say to people, you loved the last one, you'll love this too, because we kind of thrive on the plays being different from each other. But I suppose they do have something in common, that they all sort of tend to have a kind of a social viewpoint, or to use theatre in a way that's going to just shift our perspective, or think differently, or sort of just I suppose enhance our empathy for the characters that we're creating, that we're presenting on stage. I mean, that's certainly something I think that runs through it all, even though they might be different in style and approach, beyond that. But so there's, hopefully, we hope anyway, a kind of a lovely mixture of variety in one way, and range of work, but also something kind of personal and authentic and coming from the heart, that kind of that runs through all of the work, really.
And Jim, then, is there a freedom for you then when you go and work with another company, or in the National Theatre, or whatever, is there a freedom, or not freedom, sorry, is there a different type of feeling then when you're going into those?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, no, I've really, I mean, it's always lovely to be asked to direct a play for someone, and I've really enjoyed all my experiences, working with other companies, kind of both here and internationally, kind of directing plays. It's always been a really great experience, and there is something lovely about going, I'm directing this play, that's just what I'm doing. I don't have to worry about the budgets, the marketing, the posters, the problems going on everywhere else, the touring venues, sort of, all the myriad of challenges, of course, that we all deal with all the time. But, if I'm honest, I suppose I actually quite like all those challenges as well. So I do like, I love kind of directing a play for Fishamble, where it's kind of representing the company and progressing the company's body of work. And, so I enjoy that ultimately, but it is also lovely, the variety and the ability to direct for somebody else every so often. Although with Fishamble being so busy, there aren't too many opportunities. But, with the opportunity to do that when it comes along is kind of relaxing in its own way as well, that you're only thinking about one thing.
And the final question for you: Do you have time for a cultural life outside your work? Like, is there anything that are there touchstones for you? In other art forms, in music or in film, or in is there work that kind of has inspired or changed you in any way throughout the years?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, I think it's I'm probably guilty a little bit of kind of being very theatre centric, because I just when I've got free time and or an evening, I'd love to go and see a play more than anything else. But of course, really enjoy music and dance, and going to see visual art and stuff as well, and all that. I mean, I think engaging in every aspect of life kind of enhances your own life, but also your job as a director, and your ability to work with people, and the more we, and I really kind of enjoy kind of just being open up to new opportunities and doing things I wouldn't normally do. A few years ago we were talking to venues actually, and they were saying that that, I don't know if you find this in Access, that they find it quite difficult sometimes to get the theatre audience to go to a music gig, or the music audience to go to a dance show, or that people don't tend to cross over art forms that much. And so we got together with Cushcame Dance Company and with Crash Ensemble Music Company and Fishamble, and we did for a few years on Culture Night. We did a kind of a half an hour of a play, a half an hour of a dance show, and a half an hour of a music concert. And it was a taster, I suppose, for audiences to try things out. And then the idea was that that you go to the box office afterwards, and the three companies had shows coming up, and if you bought tickets for all three, you paid for two and you got one free. So yeah. You might normally go to a dance show and a music show, but you also bought a ticket for the play, just to kind of open up your experiences in that way. And it worked really, really well, so much so that we actually developed a show there in 2016 called Invitation to a Journey, that was kind of a collaboration between the three companies, and was kind of fantastic. And I learned so much about dance and choreography working with David Bulger, and then working with Kate Ellis and everyone, Deirdre Gribbon from Crash Ensemble taught me so much about music and how music works. So it's certainly that kind of inspired me to try and engage more with other art forms as well,
Jim, thanks very, very much for taking part. I'll let you go with that.
Thank you, Mark.
It's been great to talk to you, and look forward to seeing you and your work after we all venture out forth again.
Oh, yes. Yeah, well, I look forward to that very much too. Always lovely to talk to you though, Mark. Thanks very much.
Thank you.